Good morning. Did you have a good week in the Lord? Had a busy week. John Smith says if the devil can't make you be bad, he'll make you busy. And never were truer words spoken, John, than this past week. But that was the road that leads home. So that's just stuck with me this week, that I want to complain about the road that I'm on, but it's what the Lord has for us. There's a lady called me yesterday. I was telling Jency and Joseph about this, about how we are when we pray for things. She called me. We were trying to get ready to go somewhere to do something. She called wanting help. And the whole way there I prayed, Lord, let it be something simple so that I can get done and get back home and be about my business. Well, I got there, and it was something simple. And then I got mad because I drove all that way and it was something simple. And the Lord said, well, didn't you ask for something simple? We're just a mess, aren't we? Very much so. So here in 2 Samuel chapter 18, we left Absalom hanging in the tree. Left Absalom hanging in the tree. You know, in verse 9 there it says it almost seems like a chance encounter. It says Absalom met with the servants of David. It was not his intention to meet with the servants of David, I don't believe. You know what I find here is God acts in here. God acts throughout this chapter by not acting. You know, there's no mention of God did this or God did that, but you know He's here. And you know He's in control, and you know He's directing this battle. I talked many times about, I've said this, our faith outlasting the silence of God, but He's there. It said the wood devoured more than the sword. Who was directing that mule to run under that tree? Who directed Clay down the road he went down all last week? There might have been some potholes there. Straight is the way, or straight is the gate, and narrow is the way. In looking at this is the end of Absalom here. We're coming to the conclusion of this sad chapter. David's going to lose another son. He's already lost Amnon. Now he's going to lose Absalom. All because of his sin. And I think that guilt partly is what inflames David's sorrow at the end of this chapter. He knows his actions is what's led to all of this, his bad decisions. But Absalom's bad decisions is what's led to all this. You children, I want to challenge you. Ephesians 6:1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, not providence. Promise. That it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. This young man's life's cut off short. He's a rebellious young man. He does not want God. And so when he needs God, where's God at? Where is God? I'm sure I've lost some days because of my rebellion with my parents. Disobedience. But I thank God, you're talking about the closer we get to God, the more sinful we are. It's hard to get rid of something, though, that you don't see. But I thank God I do see my sin now more than ever. I would rather be that than blind. I can't go back. I don't want to go back to being blind to this stuff. There's a comfort here. But anyway, we'll pick this up. Remember, the young man saw Absalom hanging in the tree, and Joab said, why didn't you finish him off? He said, well, the king gave an order that we were not to touch him. And if I'd have done it, you'd even testified against me. I know how you are. We talked about Joab's testimony last time, and I won't rehash all that, but it speaks for itself there. Joab was about his way. Now, he had a little bit of a bone to pick here, I think, with Absalom too. Remember, he went and got Absalom and brought him back. And then Absalom burned his barley field. Y'all forgot that? I bet you Joab hadn't. Because Joab was a grudge holder. Remember what he did to Abner over killing his brother? So I don't think, you won't convince me that Joab hadn't forgot this fellow here burnt his field up. Burnt his field up. See, when David, in the end here, he sins towards the end of this book, 2 Samuel, and the prophet comes and says, do you want to fall in, God's going to give you an option, do you want to fall into the hands of man or into the hands of God? And David said, let us fall into the hand of God, for he's merciful. Absalom here fell into the hands of man because he didn't want God. He wanted his way. He was about his agenda. He didn't want the Lord's anointed. He wanted to force his kingdom on God's kingdom. And he meets an end here. In verse 14, Joab's disgusted with this young man. He says, then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. I don't have time for this. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And the 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar which is in the king's dale. Look how prideful he was. He's already built him a monument in the Valley of the Kings. Reared him up a monument so that people would know who he was. Now, did all that help him? We know in verse 9 it says he was hung between heaven and earth. Did his beautiful countenance help him then? Did the way he could smooth talk and be a politician help him then? Listen, our relationship with God is all that's going to matter when we're hanging between heaven and earth. My ability to program a computer, my ability to fix a computer, my ability to do whatever ain't going to matter when I'm hanging between heaven and earth. That's my warning to you this morning. Listen, this is a warning to us. If we don't want the things of God, we'll be hung by an oak somewhere. It says that he raises up for himself a pillar which is in the king's dale, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and is called unto this day Absalom's place. Now, I don't know, it doesn't tell us what happened. We know in chapter 15, Absalom had 3 sons born to him, and they may have died in infancy. But he says here he didn't have any, or he built this because he didn't have any children. This is sad, isn't it? What could have been? What could have been? And that's what I want, mainly I said I want to challenge his children, because I was sitting where you were at, and I was given this same challenge. Don't let the mule hang you under the oak tree. He was somewhere he shouldn't have been. He wasn't obeying his parents. His pride, his bad decisions left him hanging in the oak tree, forced to face man's wrath because he didn't want God. There was no rescue here. Now David, on the other hand, this is a victory for him, because when David rebelled and sinned against God, what did he do when Nathan the prophet came? He repented. David was not a perfect man here in this. He repented. He accepted the chastening of the Lord, and it was brutal. Read Psalms 51. Restore the bones that thou hast broken. You ever had a broke bone? So here Absalom is hanging in a tree because of his pride. We all deserve to hang on a tree, don't we? But thankfully, one went and hung on a tree for us. Jesus went and hung on a tree so that we don't have to hang on a tree. Go to Galatians chapter 2. I want to go there in closing. I'll read you Matthew 16:24. Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. And Jesus hadn't even been crucified yet he was telling his disciples, take up your cross. And that was right after he just told Peter to get behind him. Get thee behind me, Satan. He said, if any man's going to come after me, you're going to have to take up your cross. If we take up our cross, what does that do? That unites us with Christ. That's where we're unified with Him at, is on the cross. And Paul said it best here in verse 20. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but who lives in me? Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. See, we don't have to hang in that oak tree because He did. See, I'm a lot like Absalom here. I can get prideful. That's what happened to me yesterday when I was complaining about the Lord answering that prayer. I wanted something simple. Well, I ain't got time. This is beneath me. He said, I answered your prayer. You wanted something simple. It's something simple. I am crucified. You know what we got to do? We got to deny self. Absalom would not deny self. In fact, he ingratiated himself with it. He had an entourage of 50 men that ran before him. Where were those 50 men at now? See, your sin will put you out here all alone, and the devil's done with you. Sin will take you further than you wanted to go. It'll keep you longer than you wanted to stay, and it'll cost you more than you wanted to pay. So my point is, let's take up our cross. Listen, when we take up our cross and we're united with Jesus on that, we then begin to see the unconditional love. We begin to see our sin. We begin to see why God so loved the world. Like Jesus with the woman at the well, He knew she was thirsty, and that's why she had 5 husbands. And He didn't say you need a 6th husband. He said, if you drink of this water. This is contrary thinking, isn't it? Deny yourself. Paul said, I'm still alive in this flesh, but it's Christ that liveth in me. So if we'll go ahead and nail this flesh to the tree, we won't end up like Absalom did. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, or you'll be hanging by an oak tree. I'll tell you what, I've come close a time or two myself. I thank God that I outlived my stupidity and my immaturity in a lot of areas, and that He opened my eyes. Listen, y'all got. And I grew up in a Christian home, came to a church every Sunday. In fact, if the doors wasn't open, my daddy would open the doors. But it became a ritual to me. Listen, Absalom grew up under David, a man that wrote the Psalms, and what did he do? It was just a ritual to him. Something he wanted to overthrow and impose his own will on. Donald mentioned about that. That vexes your soul, brother, when you see stuff like in a church house. And that was Jesus. He took issue with who? The Pharisees, the religious ones. And it does me too. That vexes me more, I think, than the world at times. When I see what goes on in the church houses. Not what's out there. What's out there is, you kind of expect that. Let's be crucified with Christ this week. Let's deny self. Suffer wrong. Woo, that hurts, don't it? I love y'all. May the Lord bless you.